Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Magic the Gathering Arena. Today is Wednesday, July 15th. We're starting late again. I think we're going to end up doing that probably a lot. In fairness, I am trying to adjust for that because there definitely have been days in the past week where I've just been asleep during the daytime hours and doing other things in the nighttime hours, so I've just not really been getting to doing enough daily quests as I would like to be doing on Magic, and yeah, there's just been some losses of potential progress there. Meanwhile, what I've mostly been messing with is not video game related. I did spend a large amount of Galaxian pack. It's a little weird to get, but okay. I did spend a massive amount of time just like still trying to set up my server to send end-to-end encryption. I had set up a script to use one of the many email apps that you can use in Debian Linux. Effectively, there's a command called mail, there's a command called send mail, and then there's a interwoven system called postfix that then sends through a command called SMNTP, which is probably simple mail network transfer protocol or something like that. And so I'm having to figure out what each one of those programs do, and effectively the last one, hopefully the last one, is the SMTP one, and I need to write a script, a program to manipulate the data and send it in the right format to the program after it's been encrypted. So I'm effectively making a man-in-the-middle, not attack, but a man-in-the-middle helper script to add encryption, because at least by default it seems like none of these softwares really have that. Meanwhile, I'm also jumping between that and still trying to get my router to send its logs when it's running as a cron service, as a timed service. Cron is the time scheduler. And it just doesn't want to work, and I don't know why. The core of it comes from the fact that cron doesn't run as root on a DDWRT. Rather, it runs as its own software, as its own login, so it doesn't have access to something. So when it's scheduled, it sends me a blank email. When it's not scheduled, it does everything perfectly. So it's weird that way. Forgot to open a pack, apparently. And see, opening these packs at this point is kind of redundant. So I'll probably spend some more time on that. I'm also just trying to find other obsessions. I'm getting deeper and deeper down the well, with just, if I see even like one little warning, one little error on my router, I'm trying to get rid of those. And I did that. For instance, it seems like at some point it's hard-coded to look for a network server that's not even the one I want to use, and it can't find it because it needs an IP address, not a www.com type of URL address. And so I had to tell it to just automatically resolve in the host file that name www address into the IP address of the right server I want it to use, and that got rid of one error. And then I think one of the softwares is just buggy in general. And then I changed a bunch of settings on using DNS via TLS to use different servers, but that's seemingly not affected anything. The thing is, we're still running into a problem, and I've always had this problem when I upload to YouTube. That takes up so much bandwidth that it just makes a semblance of a problem that really isn't there. I just don't have much upload bandwidth, and it makes it difficult, if not impossible, to try to play Hearth's Magic the Gathering while uploading videos to YouTube, because it takes all the bandwidth. This is crazy. We're going to apparently have 15 1/1 things. You can enter from your graveyard or cast it from your graveyard. If you do, create a 5/5 demon token with flying. So that's interesting. This will sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. This will give you +1/+1 whenever you get health. Return to up to 2 target cards with total converted mana of 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Put a death touch counter on each of them, then put a menace counter on either of them. So you get 1 death touch, 1 menace. And then, as long as it's your turn, this creatures and planeswalker you control have lifelink. So this gives everything lifelink. And then this one. And this one costs 2 mana or goes in tapped. Interesting. And this one's called Best Friends. So we have a We Are Many workshop here where we're just going to play with a bunch of cards of the exact same thing, really violating the rules of any standard way you could play Magic. So it's kind of silly, but I kind of get it too. I can't hate these workshops. I kind of just hate the way they're presented in a lot of fashions. So if that was pretty much the accountability section, then the other accountability section that I'll say here is I've been testing out this Simpson Tapped Out clone. If you don't know what Simpsons Tapped Out is, it's a city that you build and then you click and wait on the missions, and it just constantly adds more content that you can buy, and there's a constant percentage of that is premium content only that you can buy to decorate your city. Let's see. And yeah, that's about it. College Life is a new Talker adult version of that, where you're given missions and all the text in the missions are talking about sex. They're blatant, just obsession with sex, like and in some of the group missions you can do, you build up relationships with the couples, the groups that can be couples. There's about 3 guys and I would say about 10 girls amongst them, and then 2 of the girls also have a lesbian relationship between just that one couple so far, and then one assumes that they would add more later on. And it's only been out for a couple of months, and the first event that I saw, and I think the first event that happened was a fall event where trees would fall, would drop leaves. You'd click on the leaves, you'd collect the leaves, you got some kind of reward. I don't even think it was much of a reward for doing that. You got like maybe a tree or something, and that was it. And that was fine. Like, if I missed out on collecting all of that, that was fine. The next event, though, that they did, which just ended, was an event where you absolutely had to tap. It was basically the same thing. You were tapping on underwear thieves, panty thieves, and when you tapped on them, the little avatar would lose all their clothes and drop a panty, and you were supposed to collect 2,000 of them. I've just been so busy so busy not accomplishing anything really. I got like 1,780 and ran out of time. It would have taken me like 2 or 3 hours, and I just needed to sleep instead to miss that. And if you had gotten 2,000, you get like an outfit for one of the characters, it seems like, and a whole bunch of cash, which the non-premium currency in the game is not really important at all. So that's really where it went with that, is that you were supposed to get 2,000. I didn't get 2,000, and then it pops up an advertisement that says last chance, and this last chance banner wants 6,000 of the premium currency. Now 6,000 is roughly the equivalent of $500 worth of the premium currency, and the only thing I could possibly assume there is that this was supposed to be this was supposed to be 600, because the 6,000 is going off the side of the screen anyways, so it doesn't even make sense that that could possibly have been what they actually intended, was for it to say 6,000 and then the 6,000 go off the screen. In fact, I wouldn't be a surprise if it was actually supposed to be 60, which would be about $5, which would be much more reasonable than even $50. But certainly that was the nail in the coffin as far as my interest of playing that game legitimately. So then I went and found a crack, and the crack will give you premium currency. If you instant upgrade the buildings, you'll get 200. The crack is a little bit of a problem though, because you need it to really give about 2,000 or more. So because while many of the things you purchase from the storefront now don't cost you anything in the premium currency when they normally would, speeding up actions still cost you currency. Purchasing things from the costume shop still costs you premium currency, and the last chance costs you currency. And you can't buy anything from the storefront for free unless you have that premium currency in your account to start with. So effectively, what you need is probably around 8,000 of the premium currency. Remember, 6,000 at the moment is what is going to be taken away from that 8,000 to get this last chance outfit. Otherwise, this outfit is just going to be completely unattainable. And there's no way you can do that with the save file I had, which I put a lot of work into, because you can't instant complete and instant upgrade the buildings if they're already maxed out. So what I've had to do, and this is its last chance, is make a second account with a different email, start over from the beginning, and try really hard to not screw it up. Which there's definitely a chance that you can screw it up. And what that does mean is you will I'm hoping what happens is interesting. What I'm hoping happens is they can resolve that was a mistake and fix it. Otherwise, I kind of am just going to be out of luck, I think, because spending the 6,000 won't work. Not unless I can get a new game up several levels. I'm at like level 4. You can get up to level 4 in less than 12 hours, but I need to get it up to like level 6, maybe level 8, maybe even level 10 or 12 very, very quickly, so that I can get more buildings, so I can instant upgrade those buildings as fast as possible. And there's really no way in the game, like there's 12 achievements in College Life you can do that gets you maybe 100 of the premium currency. Knows the difference here, like 100 versus 6 to 8,000 needed. And if you want to get all the costumes, those are still going to cost it. That's where that extra 2,000 comes from. You can, with the crack, get all of the extra characters. Extra characters helps you get gold and the non-premium currency and experience and more buildings. But there's only like 5 of those characters too. It really feels like they've just, as a free-to-play game, they've either gone extremely greedy, or they've just dropped the ball. And if they can't correct it with this $6,000 banner issue, then I think that's probably a point to rage quit. There is also definitely a point to be made and said that they've not really created a good system in their game. And this is kind of a problem with Simpsons Tapped Out also, is that there just isn't really a game there. As much as it tries to look like a game, it is much like that Dungeon Keeper free-to-play game where you just very quickly ran into extremely long wait times to play the game for 5 minutes to then get back in the wait times. And it is an incredibly dangerous balance to make a game like that and try to make a game like that work. So yeah. There's just not a great experience there. And I'll once again mention that as an adult game, College Life at best is only interesting once every few days. Like it really only has maybe 100 stationary cutscenes of nudity and dialogue that's kind of funny, but sometimes badly written too. So there's just not a lot of entertainment value there, and that seems to be the case for a lot of the Nutaku adult games, is that there's just not enough meat on that bone. And you probably would be better off playing a visual novel with nude scenes in it, because then you'd be more invested in the characters and you'd probably see about the same amount of content but get more entertainment from it. That's kind of one of the beauty things about Honey Pop, is that Honey Pop really only had you spend maybe an hour or two doing the match 3 content between each like nude scene. So it was very little gameplay, but also very engaging, fun gameplay doing match 3. Compared to just doing very boring, repetitive things, which tends to be the case for a lot of these games. So this returns X number of target creatures to the creatures, like to the owner's hand. Okay, this returns a bunch of creatures. This could draw cards forever. This one could draw cards quite a bit. This can make things cheaper. This could cast very easily. And that seems to be about it. Inventory management. There is there's a CCG called Venus of War from Nutaku. I'm just gonna install it if I have any free time at some point and try it out, but I don't think it's there. And really I should just drop back down to being okay with just playing Destiny Child, which Destiny Child still is going very good, although I am wasting time doing other things, so I am kind of dropping the ball on some daily quests. I actually missed all the daily quest rewards a couple days ago, which is the first time in nearly a year playing the game that has happened. Which kind of sucks, but it wasn't a big deal. I still probably will run into a max situation where I'm just top tier, high level player in Destiny Child fairly quickly, maybe next 6 months to a year. I'm getting basically every card at this point. But I still have some work to do. I still have some red fire-colored level 4 characters that need to be upgraded, and a ton of level 5 characters that need to be upgraded. Interesting. One less to cast. So if this decreases everything by 1 colorless mana, let's see, I guess I should lock this. Like, since we just played this deck, we know exactly what they have. The only thing I would say about Destiny Child is, if you were a new player, you would have missed a lot, and you'd have a live catch-up, and that's just always going to be the case. I kind of wish both College Life and Destiny Child loaded up their events in some way that was more non-linear, instead of having those events only happen at specific points in time. Let the new players go back and play the old events and work their way up. I would prefer that. Well, I guess this is just draw cards, so this draws a card, which should just give me 1 card. Next time I play this, it should be 2 cards. Put that on the field. But yeah, a lot of games in general would benefit from events either coming back once a year, which Adventure Town, which was a game I played for several years until I finally just gave up and said, look, they're not adding any new content at all. Adventure Town would have like a Halloween event and a Christmas event, and it would just happen every year, and it would be the exact same rewards, and there really is nothing wrong with that idea. There is this problem, certainly with a lot of games, where if you don't start day one, they lose relevancy immediately, and there's just no reason to play. That's not limited to just mobile games. That's also like Call of Duty, Battlefield, a lot of first-person shooter games. Destiny is a great example. Fallout 76, not so much, but World of Warcraft, probably. It really comes down to whether the content was good or not at the beginning. And we've seen how even World of Warcraft has like rebooted their server, so it's like pre-Cataclysm for people that want to go back and relive that experience. And I think a lot of games should have that integrated in mind in the first place. Particularly when you're talking about like mobile games that are free-to-play games that are really not player versus player by much metric. Also, I will mention that I almost as YouTube videos were uploading, I was kind of cleaning up and making some changes to my OBS software and just where files are in my videos folder, and cleaning up my desktop, little things like that, and just doing a little PC spring cleaning, I guess, is the best way to describe that. And I accidentally deleted my streaming scene on OBS, all the settings and things to stream Magic the Gathering Arena. Fortunately, that folder had file history enabled, so I just pulled a copy from yesterday out of the file history, a backup, and restored it. But yeah, that kind of sucked. What didn't suck is when I went to the bathroom in the last stream on Monday, I went to the idle screen and I had installed a script that I forgot I had installed that pauses the recording automatically when I go to the idle screen. So even though I wasted time looking for that long 20-minute section in which nothing happened on the stream, it was not to be found, because it did literally pause and unpause the video when I went to the idle screen, which is a great automation, but it is kind of also a great indication of the problem of automating things and then being let's see. What is this? Demon. Okay, well, then demon it is. And then x equals 2. And then do that. And then that will cost me all of 1, because this costs 1 less to cast. So yeah, everything's kind of working except for me. Like I'm the one dropping the ball, and I think part of it's summer and the heat, and just a lot of frustration, a lot of going down the rabbit well and doing IT nerd stuff instead of focusing on recording, having dropped the ball as far as uploading and scheduling videos. I desperately need to do that. I have 115 gigs free right now because I cleaned up a lot of stuff, but I literally had no room at the end of Monday's stream at all. I filled up the hard drive just trying to convert the videos that they're recorded in. They're recorded in a format that allows it to potentially record all the way up to 0 on the hard drive and fill it up and still only lose that last bit of footage instead of losing all of the footage. But to do that, it then has to re-encode / remux the video, and when it does that, it creates a issue. Probably. It was just enough to get that much, and that was it. I can kind of attack here, and that's about all I can do. So I am imagining that after today's stream, I will probably start more uploading and just continue to upload and continue to upload and continue to upload. And then I actually need to focus on some scheduling stuff too, and not just upload Magic videos and not focus on the 2 to 3 games that are behind. Also, I still have not done anything new with Valley, so we've taken kind of a long break in between a Valley, which is I don't think going to be a major problem. Alright, next we have Machinations. Each non-land card in your starting deck shares a card type. As a Murray, the collector enters the battlefield, choose the card type. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less. So, I guess Artifact Creature is probably what we're looking for. Let's see. Artifact Creature and then a whole bunch of Steel Overseers to proliferate. Alright, let's see how this works with the new companion mechanic. I think that's probably enough meandering as far as setup. Now we probably just need to start going through video game news. There's a decent number of video game things to announce. Let's see. The next Pro Evolution software, I believe, is going to be a smaller DLC, is what they announced, which is a interesting and smart move, I think, on their part. I do think the idea of every year having a whole new product from scratch and trying to sell it at the maximum of $60, now possibly $70 a year is too much. And I imagine what they'll want to do is try and establish something like a TikTok system where the 1 year you get a new base engine upgrade, and the next year you just get a stats DLC upgrade, and then the next year you get a base engine upgrade that improves the graphics maybe a little bit, but not by much. So this will add mana, which potentially would be useful to just buy more things. This is only in the deck because whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on it and draw a card. So this will loop. Getting this on the field is very useful. But this deck is still going to be a pain in the butt. I want to do this first. And activate this ability. Could I not have activated this ability last time? Maybe I could have, and then maybe I should have. We have a game on Steam here called I_Darkness. It looks like a dark screenshot syndrome horror asset flip game for $2.69. Nothing more to say there. I need to learn to stop saying nothing more to say there, because that does add more things. Next we have a game, tag sexual content and nudity, called Pet Girl, that is already mixed, and it's early access for $1.19, English not supported, Chinese only. So yeah, it probably isn't that great. We're still about every month or so we still run into this situation where there is a lot of stuff going on Okay, let's see. Let's play this. And then play this. And then play this. And then tap this. I think I very possibly have lost. But we'll see if we can block something. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called The Place I Call Home, which looks like it's an asset flip survival game. It would be interesting to maybe play a game where you are in the middle of a forested area surviving in like a post-apocalypse without zombies or anything. Here you can see food and what looks like maybe a medicine indicator. Instead of being on an island, like almost all survival games, you're either on a raft or an island, limited resources, limited amounts of land, whereas it would kind of make a little bit more sense to diversify that a little bit. And it wouldn't be a terrible game to have kind of a linear survival story, kind of like Disaster Report where you're in an urban environment. Just it's obviously a hard decision to not put zombies or some kind of monsters. I want to play that again because I think I might actually be able to win this one. Like, because when you look at a game like Valley is a game where you're way better off. The game would have been way better off if there were just zombies running around to shoot. Instead, that's absolutely not what happened. So you do have this kind of weird experience where there's lack of game. And that lack of game certainly does not help things. Yeah, but if you think about games such as The Last of Us or Tomb Raider, or any of those games, yeah, you can't activate this turn. Interesting. A lot of those games probably would be better off or just as well served if they weren't full of zombies or enemies. No, they'd be different games. They'd probably be shorter games, certainly, but there would be a difference there. I'd like to see it done in the same way that I'd like to see some of the Disaster Report games done, or there be a Western version of that. When you look at something, can I really put this on the field already? Let's see. Add 2 mana, gain life. Well, might as well do that. And then activate this. Moving on, we have a game called Rush Out the Room, which looks like a low-effort student project from a Chinese developer. $1.59, English only. Interesting. Why is it English only and then have a bunch of Asian characters in the descriptor? Remember, a lot of games were kicked out of the Chinese App Store for not having ISBNs. I wouldn't be surprised if a significant amount of those games quickly get dumped onto Steam. And once again, it will just be a challenge and up to Steam and Valve whether they want to let a ton of terrible games be dumped on their storefront or not, or whether they care. Let's see. Play that. And then artifact, creature, land. Let's see. Well, I'm going to go with artifact, but apparently artifact and creature are different things. Interesting. Wouldn't have really thought of it that way. Would have thought artifact creature was its own thing. Let's see. But apparently this is not an artifact creature. So I should have checked creature. No. I don't think it would have mattered any. I've kind of played everything though. So I think the game kind of ends at this point. Either you win or you lose. Because I can just keep on buffing and I can keep on buffing, but unless he can pull out something amazing, which he can, I'm going to lose fairly quickly. Next we have a game on Steam called Dark Room, which looks like it might be a more of a hidden object point and click game. Like, you see this animation moving, but I don't know if that really is how the game works, or if this is just a cutscene or trailer. Even if this is a game where you actually are walking around, it kind of has a roughness to it that makes it feel like somebody actually tried to make a game versus an asset flip game. But yeah, it does kind of seem like it is a Jigsaw Saw-esque game. They're comparing it to the Nonware games, which was also sold as a Saw-esque game. Alright, well, I'm going to put this on the follow list, and we'll see if this hidden object puzzle game, escape the room type game, can be good enough quality to be justifiable to be purchased and played on a PC. Which I think there kind of is a slightly higher standard to play games on the PC compared to playing it on a cell phone or maybe even a console. Speaking of console versions of games, I guess there's the Deadly Premonition 2 game has come out on the Switch and apparently has pretty terrible oh man. So I gotta make sure I use this first as the first step. Right. Can only have one of those on the field. Can destroy that. Yeah, that ruined them. And go ahead and play that. Go ahead and put that on the field. And they're just going to give up. He could have put up a much bigger defense. than he did. That guy just didn't play very well. So that's 500 gold. And let's just try spin cycle and see what this does. Whenever you cycle another card, put a 1/1 counter on this. Cycling 1. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it has counters on it, put all those counters on this guy at the beginning of combat on your turn. If Ozlov has counters on it, you may move all counters from this to a target creature. So the Ozolith just maintains all counters. This creates 1/1 soldiers. This one puts a +3/+3 on it, but it only puts a trample counter. So there's a difference between giving +3 and getting 3 +1/+1 counters. And there's some weirdness definitely in Magic in what is a counter and what isn't. Whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it onto the battlefield with a flying counter on it. Okay. So this is all about the counters, and more than even cycling. It's a little weird that they give you 4 different decks to play, and yet you only need to get 1 victory. But I can't say that's a bad thing. That's probably a very smart move on their part for these workshops to make them a little bit easier and a little bit more reasonable to play. There definitely have been workshops that only had 2 decks, and then it had a lot of challenge to try and get 1 or 2 victories from those 2 decks. I kind of wish these workshops would not advertise by putting different styles of lands. It should just be the basic lands always. Just and by basic I mean a consistent land card always, or there should just be a choice throughout the entirety of the game that I want all my lands to look like this, unless I otherwise choose something different. Okay, put this here. We can only have 1 of these on the field, right? Because it's a legendary card. So this, and then this, and then attack. Next we have a game on Steam called Vegetaria, which looks like it's just an asset flip. Like, it says managing your own vegetable shop. Interesting. I was gonna say it was a survival game where you were just like looting things. $13.49. That is an interesting idea for a survival game too. Instead of having it be a item of some sort, like a plague that causes everyone to die, just have everybody be effectively raptured and disappear. 3 or more planes. Let's get some 1/1 counter. Let's see. Now with this one, you have to just kind of rush. That's all there is to say about it. This is interesting. The developer is called Mohammed Kouari, and the publisher, so it's like a self-publisher. But apparently, either this is new where they are putting the title and all of this here, or one of my plugins is doing that, or I've just been ignoring this section, which, in all fairness, the vast majority of every Steam page, there's just a ton of stuff to ignore. And you really have to just train yourself to look for the important things. Let's see. Enter tapped. And cycle. Okay. And no attack. Next, we have a game on Steam called 3-on-3 Freestyle from a company called Joy City, which looks like it would be an interesting basketball game, but it's already mixed and it already has, I think, enough reviews to do it. So it's like having major server issues. It's a free-to-play game that was online player versus player, so it wouldn't be a game I would have covered anyways. But it definitely does seem to suck that that would be an occurrence, and that the game would launch and not have servers to support the enthusiasm around it. Plus 3-3 instant. Okay. What do we want to do? Cycle. Cycle. How's this? Next. Put it on that. Okay, now that's 5-5. Let's see, next game we have is Tag Sexual Content. It's called Rosalind in the Palace of Flowers. Looking at this art style, this very... I always want to say this is more of like a French high fashion Art Nouveau style. I don't know if Art Nouveau is the right phrase to use. Some might argue that this is just really, really bad drawing and really bad anatomy, or maybe even good drawing with bad anatomy understanding. Not to say that half the anime moe girls are following actual good anatomy either. It's just that that's become a much more accepted style, where I don't think there's anywhere in the world where this is the accepted art style, although you do occasionally see it. Clearly this is just kind of like a low effort visual novel game selling for $2.99 English only, and they've drawn a ridiculous amount of cards to then have a ridiculous amount of things. What is, he used frantic inventory to do that. TechRaptor has an article here. A teacher taught classes using Super Mario Odyssey. Interesting. I suppose, but it really wouldn't work, I imagine, for very long. It's not like Super Mario Odyssey even has a good system on it to work for that. Like there isn't any kind of like streaming service or anything around Mario Odyssey, and there really isn't like a high physics focus around Mario Odyssey compared to something like Kerbal Space Program, which I think you probably could teach something more from Kerbal Space Program. Let's see. This deck would work if I could keep more people on the field, but I can't. So if I was to let this guy die, I wouldn't have anybody else on the field that I could give the counters to. And that's what you need, is you just need 5, 6, 7 of these on the field, which this would have helped with that, certainly. Yeah, my continued reevaluation of the Ubisoft situation really has, at this point, said that it seems like there was more than enough evidence to reasonably believe that there was some institutionalized corruption / harassment going on there. Downright to the point where it feels like it wasn't just somebody was turning a blind eye to one person. More, it felt like it was like encouraged or just openly allowed. And yeah, I guess there is always that problem, that danger in which if your boss is of lacking moral character and the boss is drinking on the job or sexually harassing people on the job, then it eventually lets the employees below them feel like they are free to do that also. In today's news on that, a Christophe Dorenes is named the head of Ubisoft Montreal after Yannis Malay's resignation. So, one thing we should there seems to be some of this is happening in Ubisoft Montreal, whereas it seems like some of it also was happening in the main Ubisoft office is in France. It would be a little bit more work than I'm willing to do to check and see if kind of check and see where the Ubisoft offices are, because there's probably one in France, there's probably one in Montreal. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 2 in France. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there was multiple offices, and maybe that is the problem. There's a decent argument just for the economics of it to disallow for having more than one office. I don't want to play any more of those. There definitely are some companies that could not do business that way. Like, you couldn't really tell GameStop that they could only have their corporate office and then all of their franchise stores. You really couldn't tell Walmart that. Well, you could, but it would be very hard for them to stay in business. Whereas a lot of other companies probably would be better off if at the very least they were required to stay in their own country of origin, and there was just a little bit less globalization going on. I think in general you could fix a lot of problems by saying companies cannot have offices and headquarters set up in different states as in countries, and particularly in the United States, different states as in states, because there's definitely a lot of headquarters set up in one place to avoid taxes or legal laws that they don't want applying to them. A lot of location shopping. In the sense of Ubisoft, if everybody was in the same place making the same games, it at least would have let somebody who would have acted responsible and stopped a lot of this nonsense that seems to have gone on. And I'm going to stick with just calling it all alleged at this point, or because it still is just all alleged until they have a day in court. If they ever have a day in court. But yeah, had there been one office, it would have potentially let somebody fix some of these problems. On the other hand, you can almost assuredly guess that part of McDonald's franchise business option and ideas is to allow a franchisee to hire and abuse and overwork and exploit people without there being a union or a corporate HR department to really call and deal with it. I imagine if McDonald's does have an HR department that you tried to call the corporate on, I imagine they would do absolutely nothing, and anybody that filed a complaint would probably get fired. So yeah. But I am definitely a fan of the idea of forcing more smaller businesses, less efficient businesses. Because when a business is less efficient, that means more people have jobs. It's just that simple. When a business says they want to become more efficient, that means they want to lay off people or reduce people's hours. Of course, if we're going to get to a post-scarcity society and everybody's just going to have universal basic instinct, universal basic income, not basic instinct. If everybody just had universal basic income and a lot of people didn't have to work, that didn't want to work, then there's really no need to, at that point, and only at that point, to have less efficient companies. We could have super efficient companies that literally only have one person running the whole business, and who cares? Although even at that point, that may open up a possibility of major wealth inequality, and if you had, say, Jeff Bezos getting billions and billions of dollars and just all the profit from Amazon.com, and he had no employees and such, and he was just gaining so much money that he could effectively bribe everyone on the planet and corrupt every politician on the planet, that's still a bit of a problem. At a certain point, it does get back to the idea that there needs to be a 100% tax above a certain amount of income on people, just a maximum amount of money that you should be able to have. Like $1 billion really should be the individual maximum. $1 trillion maybe for companies, and every single penny that you own above $1 billion or $1 trillion should be 100% taxed, taken away, given to poorer people. I wouldn't really think that more than 100 million really is needed for any individual. But yeah, we need to try our best to not grow wealth inequality. See, I believe Jeff Bezos has $43 billion. If you took 40 billion of that and left him with only 3, or 42 of that and left him with only 1, he should still be totally capable of living a very nice lifestyle with $42 billion potentially to give to the poorest of the poor around the world, or even specifically in the United States. There's 300 million people in the United States. Let's assume that half of that are homeless, which that number is not that much, but let's assume that the 10% are homeless of the 300 million. So 30 million people are either homeless or in a unsafe living condition of some sort. 30 million divided into 40 billion is about $100. So, am I doing the math right? 100. No, it's about $100,000, I think. I can't think of the math, but I think it is somewhere around $100,000 for that could be spent on 30 million people to get them a house, which I think that math kind of checks out. Like, we could fix homelessness, as it were. Now, there are nuances to the homelessness problem, as all problems, but you can fix a lot of things with just stopping these dragons like Jeff Bezos from sitting on piles and piles of money. And that money doesn't just trickle down in every divorce and every death either, which is part of the problem too, is that the rich keep their children rich and their friends rich for 4 or 5 generations before that money even slightly spreads out, and it never really trickles out in an even pattern around the world. It trickles out to their friends and people close and near to them, people in the general area. Like, if Jeff Bezos say lives in Manhattan, he may donate a lot of stuff when he dies to Manhattan charities, which then donate things to people in Manhattan. That doesn't help anybody in Nevada or Arkansas or California. Let's see. Moving on. I don't have time to get into an economics rant. Tilting Point has acquired PlayMe Studios and FTX game assets. Let's see. I haven't heard of either one of these games, but apparently Narcos, Cartel Wars, The Walking Dead, Free Casino Slots, Criminal Minds, the mobile game. So some kind of old games. Let's see. Let's do this. Because it was going to make me sacrifice the creature anyways. So now is the question, can we pull this off? Four is all I got. So this guy could probably kill me fairly easily in one attack. I don't know if this is exactly how this is going to break out or not. Let's see. This would do 1 and 1 and 1. So that's like 3 damage. 1, 2, 3. And he did something, so now I'm gonna have to do something to try and balance this out. Okay. This is gonna cost me 2 to do. And I need this activated. I need this activated or I'm gonna die. I'm playing this super, like, down to the wire. Okay. Let's see. This draws a card where this would draw a card too, so we want to do it that way. This is 3. So I could put this on the field. But I don't see a reason to. Because it still wouldn't give me enough of what I need. This is really close. Let's see, moving on. Necrobarista launches July 22nd for PC in 2021 for PS4 and Switch. This is a game that's interesting in the fact that it came out and was announced as this weird looking cel shaded visual novel. And then there has been kind of nothing about it at all spoken for probably about 6 months, which is weird, certainly. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that the cel shading is something that does not really work for visual novels, and the fact that it just takes like too much resources away. Okay, are we still not ready? But he gave up. Thank goodness. Thank goodness for victories. So if Necrobarista becomes a visual novel that's only like 5 hours long, I think some visual novel fans would have a problem with that. Me personally, I really wouldn't have a problem with that. We need to play red or white cards. I forgot about that. So let's go and play some white cards. It's been a while. TechRaptor has an article here. Dota 2's summer event turns the game into a roguelike. If anybody is still playing Dota 2, I guess they'll be happy around that idea. Although I do kind of feel like Dota and League of Legends probably have hit maximum saturation. TechRaptor has an article. The Pokemon trading card game introduces raid battle mode, which seems like it's something different. And what's interesting more here is the fact that there is a Pokemon card game that is done in some digital format, it seems. Either that or they have this is just an animation to show how the actual card game plays. I don't think there actually is a digital version of it. Oh yeah, there's a raid battle website you have to go to. Yeah, they've really dropped the ball as far as having a digital version of the card game for a while now. There was a version of that before, but it's been several years, I think, since they've had a well-focused trading card game, where it would make a lot of sense if there was a Switch Pokemon card game out there. YouTube tweeted out how to handle hurtful and inappropriate comments. Here are the actions you can take. You can remove the comment and all of its replies. You can flag the comments to YouTube. You can hide the user. Here's what you can do on the channel level. You can, let's see, change your upload defaults to allow all comments, hold potentially inappropriate comments, hold all comments, disable content comments. Note, if you hold any comments for review, they will not appear publicly until you've reviewed them. You can create a blocked words list. You can add comment moderators, and you can turn off comments completely. So there's not a lot of opinions in that, which I'm perfectly fine with them just linking to an article to say here's what we've got for you as to how they handle all of that. Honestly, there probably should be some guidance there to just set expectations as far as comments on YouTube. Comments on YouTube, notoriously bad, notoriously aggressive. Most content creators don't spend a lot of time reading them once they're over a certain amount. There's no real system, as far as I know, that to handle comments once you have over 200 or 300 of them. There's definitely no way to even look through comments. Like, for instance, Grant Imahara, who worked on Mythbusters and at Industrial Light and Magic, died. I didn't even figure out what he died from just a couple days ago, and I noticed on Adam Savage's Tested, they put up a video on YouTube, and I was trying to go through the comments to say, just figure out quicker than watching the entire memorial video as far as what he died of, if they were saying, and I could not do it. There needs to be some kind of Reddit style system. The Reddit upvote downvote system is still not really great to see new comments or like just random comments, but it is a better system than what YouTube has, which is just nothing, basically. It would be nice if you could, as a viewer going through comments on a video, have some videos comments labeled as questions, some labeled as replies, some labeled as side topics, based on the video. And because a lot of times comments on videos, there's a lot of troll joke things, so if you could if you could just categorize all of the joke things in their own category, that would be great. If you could put all the questions and break them into separate topics, that'd be great. I'd like to see something much more like a Stack Overflow style question, or question and answer comment board where somebody has an actual question and is actually looking for help, and you see the replies to it, and that's the entire discussion thread, instead of comments on YouTube where there are really no discussion threads. It's just a wall where anybody can spray paint any garbage, and maybe there is something beautiful and helpful in that, but it's just such a mess. And YouTube is trying to emphasize comments, but they've really failed to do anything to improve it. They needed to get something like Google Circles to have worked a lot better and integrated that a lot better into YouTube's comment system, instead of just forcing people to have a Circles account to be on YouTube, have a YouTube account, which is what they did, and then they shut down Google Circles. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Former Argonaut CEO wants to bring back Croc, which, okay, a third-tier 3D platforming game is not a terrible idea. There's nothing really, I think, more to say than that, though. Like, somebody would have to really want to fund that, and I don't see a real reason why you would fund a Croc remake other than because you had the license to the 6 previous Croc games and you could re-release them and resell them, versus just making a new IP that you would own outright. And nobody's going to make a new IP on a like Mario 64 3D platforming collectathon type game, because those just don't work. Let's see. What is this gonna do? Yeah, that was a decent trade. And then he did that. Well, let's do a face race at 23-1. Paper Mario: The Origami King started getting some reviews, so OpenCritic has its reviews out, like positive for classic humor and visual design. Negative is the combat system. Combat has few interesting choices and quickly becomes repetitive. It's 81 average, and the critics that recommend it are 74%. You can see it's kind of getting a 7.5 review for a Mario game. That's sort of low, but since this is kind of a more licensed spin-off side story to a Mario game, I don't think it's too bad that Nintendo particularly cares. And certainly if you think about Mario Odyssey, most people that wanted to play Mario Odyssey and have a Switch have probably already played Mario Odyssey, so Paper Mario and the Origami King is a nice little middle game that would keep kids tided over, particularly as they're stuck in their houses this summer, until the next big Mario game, or Breath of the Wild 2 or whatever is the next big thing that they're gonna work on. Let's see. What does this do? Guess that helps. This deck is just test cards, and this Griffin Airy is not working as well as I'd like it to, because there's no card in here that actually ensures I get 3 health each turn. And this would give us first strike, but I would need flying. Let's see. Spellbreak to launch as a free-to-play title. I'm going to try and stop announcing if it's from Gamatsu or Checkraptor, because we always look at those pages anyway, so you can just watch. Proletariat developed magic-focused battle royale game. It's a little weird to name your company Proletariat. It's going to be at the Epic Games Store. And let's see what it looks like. As a free-to-play game where we're running around attacking each other with magical abilities. it kind of feels like it's an attempt at making a Fortnite game with magic, which I think you'll probably see a decent amount of descriptions that fall right down that path, where it's just going to be some Fortnite with this, or Fortnite but this. Metacritic also has its Metascore for Paper Mario and Origami King at 81. Would also say that it's kind of fairly obvious that some of the Yoshi games and some of the what is the Kirby games. There's been like a Yoshi game and a Kirby game, I think, that has come out since Super Mario Odyssey, and those are like first party Mario and Nintendo titles too that haven't really sold that well. Next we have a game on Steam called VRK Shop, which I guess is Vork Shop if you were to pronounce it. It seems like it's probably just an asset flip game with some physics enabled where you can like saw things, but there's more you do in a workshop than just saw things, and you are starting seemingly with this pre-built object, and that's it. So this is kind of just a joke game, it looks like, where you're going to run around and be able to do a few things in VR, and that's it. It's early access for $19.99, which is way too expensive for what it looks like, and it's English only. Yeah, there's just kind of nothing there. If you were trying to, in VR, have some assistive technology for people that work in workshops, I don't know what you can offer them, really. Like, most people that work in workshops, whether it's mechanical, welders, woodworkers, anything like that, they kind of hate their software and the equipment they have to use. They will program CNCs and things like that, but most people that are in workshops like to work with their hands. The last thing you're doing when using even VR is working with your hands. I can't see a scenario other than maybe just the weather where you would want to be in VR doing woodworking instead of actually in your workshop working on an actual wood thing, because it just seems like you'd be doubling your thought process and doubling your labor. Perhaps one day in the future you would have some kind of remote connection where you could control a robot and have a robot arm build a table or something, but I don't really see the point of that, other than maybe scan the actions of a masterclass woodworker and then have the robot like very accurately reproduce the actions. But even that would probably take a ton of like little tweaking and programming, because even like sanding wood, you might sand a rough spot in one piece of wood, and then the next piece of wood there would be no need for that. And if you were like really old and you were having trouble breathing and you were like allergic to dust, maybe then there would be a slight idea there, but even that doesn't really pass the sniff test. It really doesn't make sense that somebody who's old and elderly could stand up and wear a VR headset and know how to use all of that to simulate woodworking. Generally, old people that like to work with their hands and still can work with their hands either go to like whittling or painting, things that can be done sitting, or even Lego is somewhat helpful for not super old people, but older people that can't can't build things like they used to. And there's kind of a beautiful idea of grandparents, great-grandparents putting together Legos for or with their grandkids. Because then that's something you can easily give away. Whereas if you have someone painting a different painting every day, you're going to quickly run out of people that would appreciate having all of those paintings and trying to hang them in their house. And imagine people would not be super happy about them selling their grandparents' paintings. Flying, okay. Play this. And go ahead and attack with that. Let's see. Vampire the Masquerade Rivals card game Kickstarter launches in August. So, yeah, Vampire the Masquerade still a thing. I guess I was wrong. There's, I don't think, any way other than to put it directly like that. I guess I was wrong about the Lego NES that was rumored to be coming, because TechRaptor has it too. Lego NES announced with over 2,500 pieces. It's $250, so you're paying about 10 cents a piece, which is about average, but it's costly. Certainly, you're not getting a major discount here. You're getting a Nintendo Premium, particularly when you think and look that a lot of these pieces are going to just be like 1x1 tiles. There is not a ton of large bricks here, and honestly, it is more difficult to get the larger bricks these days than it is to get these small bricks. It seems like those are full printed. Maybe this part rotates. Yeah, it does. Interesting. So you get a little bit of rotation there, and you can kind of simulate gameplay. It also does seem to synergize with the bigger Mario, and you get this custom like pin Lego set. I still feel like the bricks are pretty bad, and it then becomes a question, like, I totally want to buy this, but I totally don't want to buy this, and this is like another $70, I think, for the starter set. So you're just not going to get the audio at that point. And I imagine the audio sound effects are hard-coded into the levels you build with some kind of barcodes that you're given that go into the rotating screen. Yeah, I imagine that's exactly how that works. So, yeah, I'm almost certainly going to buy that, but also it's probably one of maybe 2 or 3 big Lego sets I plan on buying this year. I've still got plenty of them to wrap up, and I'm constantly falling behind anyway, so okay. I'm now lost. But I just needed to play white cards, so I'm not playing ranked, am I? If I'm playing ranked, I'm really dumb. Next we have a game on Steam called My Koi, which we've seen koi pond simulators on Steam before. Let's see what the price is. $2.99, bunch of languages. I'll put it on the fall list, but I would have a hard time justifying this because you basically, like, this might be a good little screensaver if you just needed a screensaver. But if there's actual gameplay in this, they're calling it an app. Feed them daily, watch them grow, collect new fish, escape, and relax. So there might be a little bit of gameplay in here, but yeah. It's unlikely, to say the least, unlikely that there's a good justification for covering that game or that app. Not even calling it really a game. It probably is yet another one of those Chinese games that has just been kicked off the App Store, so now they're trying to get some money. So we were not playing ranked, thank goodness for that. Next we have a game called Sanatorium Anthropin's Retreat, which looks like it is some very ugly polished horror game where you're crawling around as some kind of monsters. Does seem like it's just all over the place. It's definitely asset flips all over the place. Free to play, English. Yeah. If that looks interesting to you, I suppose you can check it out for free, but I think most people are smart enough to realize that's not worth it. Speaking of not worth it, it might be easy enough to just play this and then concede and not even bother to try to get a victory. But that would be kind of boring. That's the kind of gameplay I would do off screen, not on screen. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article. Atelier Ryza 2, Lost Legends and the Secret Fairy has been raided in Australia. So, it seems like Atelier Ryza is going to get a sequel, which the Atelier series has done sequels before, I believe, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is the only sequel it gets and then they launch out another Atelier series in a game. Like, that's where I would assume is that they would want to continue their momentum and continue moving in forward directions. Just gonna do no attack to protect this guy. Still haven't gotten around to playing the first Atelier game, although it's fairly highly rated, and It and Ni no Kuni probably are up there with Dragon Quest as far as like the top 3 JRPG games that I should cover, and by the time I had covered those 3 games alone, I probably would be burned out on JRPGs for quite a while. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Scar, which seems to be a first-person shooter game where you're supposedly shooting monsters, but I'm not really seeing any monsters, or a lot of them. Here we see they're off in the far distance being shot, and these graphics look pretty terrible. It's early access for $4.99, English full audio. Yeah. This looks very asset flippy, or at the very least it looks half finished. The textures don't look finished, it doesn't look polished at all. Let's see. The National Video Game Museum got one of the Nintendo's pre-electronic toys here. This is one of the most famous one, which is just like a grabber arm and several objects to grab with the grabber arm. Let's see what they had to say. Created by the visionary Gunpei Yokoi. The Ultra hand is one of Nintendo's most notably pre-gaming creations. There are tons of references to this extendable claw in modern Nintendo games. Which ones have you found? Yep, I've never heard of that toy either, so I'm not a super expert. See, place this, and then attack with this. Next, we have a game on Steam called Dave Man, which looks like a very pixely Pac-Man clone, as far as I can tell. Or I don't know what it is. It kind of looks like it's more of an itch.io type game versus anything else. I kind of hate this lavender black and white lavender background art style. It's $2.99. It's English, and yeah, it does definitely look like it's more of a low effort game than anything else. Let's see. No attacks this turn. Not until we can play pacifism on this guy. Or we can play this. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called 8-Bit Attack, which looks pretty bad. 8-bit like dungeon crawler. Although look at just how much screen is being taken up, showing all of these elements that don't need to be on the main screen. It's free, so the price is right. English only, but yeah. Looks like there isn't too many varied characters you can play as either. It's been a while since we've gotten anything that even begins to resemble good news in the video game industry. So I guess we can take what little we get. Reggie Fils-Aimé, who I believe at one time was in charge of Toys R Us or not KB Toys or something. That was the CEO. Or was he in charge of a pizza company? Regardless, he was the head of Nintendo of America, which kind of meant he didn't really have as much authority as you would think, since Nintendo of Japan basically makes all the games and just tells Nintendo of America what to do and how to localize. Anyways, he left for Bowser to replace him, and now he is the indie publisher, strategic advisor for the indie publisher Rogue Games, which honestly makes him feel like he is just straight up taking a major demotion there. Although it would have been hard to not end up taking a demotion in some form or fashion, because there was like literally no jobs out there that he could have potentially applied for that were as high or higher than being the CEO of Nintendo of America, unless he went and worked for Sony, or he went and worked for like Amazon Games or Twitch or YouTube Gaming or something like that. that there wasn't a lot of room for upward momentum. And maybe him being a strategic advisor for an indie company does let him work significantly less hard or less hours, so there might be something he just needed to retire. Or maybe there was some kind of secret controversy that nobody nobody knew or recognized or heard about. But I would have a hard time believing, as I've obviously going to have a hard time believing any accusation, I would definitely have a hard time believing accusations against Reggie Fils-Aimé, because I just don't think Nintendo of America would put up with that, and I don't think Nintendo of Japan would put up with any kind of internal abuse like that. Second Dinner welcomes to the team Alan Faldi, who, according to his Twitter bio, previously was the VP of marketing at Wizards of the Coast, which maybe is a problem. He was also the head of marketing at he was in marketing at Hearthstone. So Alan Faldi jumped from Wizards of the Coast before like Magic Arena probably was even off the drawing board, and went and made Hearthstone. And then Second Dinner has been broed, and basically, as we see, a growing list of employees that made Hearthstone successful for the first 5 years or so. And let's see, just a little announcement videos in a park, socially distancing, I guess, is the joke there. And we will talk later that Hearthstone has introduced a concept that kind of rivals cards like this that play different color manas, and it does certainly open up this idea as far as whether or not the it opens up this idea as far as whether or not their new concept is going to be better or worse than what Magic had already established. A lot of what Hearthstone did I think improve the general concepts of oops. Yeah, he's saying oops because there's a Death Touch character. Might as well cycle. Yeah, and but some of the things that Hearthstone has done more recently, and some of the things Hearthstone just failed to do, were problems too. They kind of fell into the same problem that Magic has, as a in the sense that they're trying to phase out cards and not maintain a kind of classic experience. I mean, I can kill this. And I can cycle. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Avarak Resurrection, which looks like it's just an asset flip low polygon game. It says it's a tactical RPG for $9.99. Nothing there. So that should be the daily quest, and I just need to be more careful going forward to ensure I reroll daily quests and I play the 10 victories, if I can play the 10 victories off screen on off days to get more. We almost certainly will get the mastery level. Also mentioned Prime Video now semi-supports that they're rolling out profiles. I got it to work on one cell phone, and I have the old version of the app on another cell phone, so that doesn't have profiles. So yeah, it's still in the works, but it does seem like it will be helpful. There is still some problems with it in the sense that the PIN code to purchases has to be 5 characters long, which is unusual. Usually PIN codes can be 4 characters long. I kind of don't hate the idea of forcing everybody to move to 5 codes, but there kind of is no reason. Like, if a PIN code is just going to be numbers, it might as well be 4 as much as if it were 8 or 12, because those things alone are going to just as easily be hackable. PIN codes usually are there for convenience. The parental restrictions are by device, which is to say you cannot have a Apple TV or something. I don't even know if Prime Video is on the Apple TV. You can't have that one device have different profiles that have different age restrictions. You can only have the device have age restrictions, and you can really only have one age restriction of several categories. It's like 7, 13, 16, and then 18 plus. So there's really not useful options there if you have 2 or 3 kids that you want to say, well, this kid is 16 years old, so I just want to avoid him watching the 18 plus things on the channel, whereas his little brother or sister is 3 years old, so I want to limit them just to 3-year-old stuff. You can't seemingly do that. And while you can make kids profiles, it doesn't seem like you can change a kid's profile to an adult's profile. So they're at that point would just have to delete their history, it seems like, which would be weird, and make a new profile. And the kids' profiles are just kind of being labeled as kids' profiles, and we don't know what that really means. So Amazon is just, Prime Video has really dropped the ball as far as doing what you would expect should have been done a long time ago to ensure that those types of things have been adjusted. It's not like Netflix hasn't had profiles for 2 or 3 years, and they're not that hard to program. Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. There's a report that Sony is increasing PlayStation 5 production by 50%. I think this is probably more of a timed leak to get enthusiasm around the PlayStation 5 more than anything else, because while there probably is some enthusiasm around the PlayStation 5, I don't think enough of it to say that they legitimately feel like they needed 50% more of what they thought they originally needed. They probably are really just kind of doing the math. Right, so here, speaking of doing the math, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and then 13. So that won't work. So he really only has to cast one spell, which do this and see what happens. I should have sacrificed this guy and kept Bola Citadel. But I think I might still be able to win here. Like the way this is phrased is they've increased production by 50% to capitalize on demand created by the coronavirus pandemic, which really feels like a big if statement. Like, we'll see what the real demand is. Moving on, CheckRaptor has an article. Pokemon Go Raid Invites finally debut following a delay. So they're in general trying to push the idea of Pokemon raids in the card games and Pokemon Go. Alright, well. This would have been the point where, had I kept Bola Citadel, I very well may have been able to pull this off more. But we'll see. We'll definitely see. Maybe there's hope at the end of the tunnel here. We are playing ranked, so we do want to actually get victories now. CheckRaptor has an article. Second Marvel Avengers War Table stream is set for late July 2020. Which, this was more hype and build up for this Marvel Avengers game, which is different from the second dinner Marvel card game that they're working on. It does feel like there's a decent chance that that would just fail miserably and they would lose that contract, and at that point I think second dinner would be doomed, but there's a small chance of that. I think Ben Brode is kind of an established industry person to point out that there's a decent chance that won't happen, and that there is a reason to trust. So if I can get another Bola Citadel on the field, I might be able to win here. Otherwise they have 8 counters and a life touch and a death touch that you can throw onto this guy. Let's see. Game Switcher has an article here. There's a new initiative to create a game industry code of ethics, and this logo is EG, which honestly looks a little bit too much like Gamergate. This logo. So they've already kind of stopped. They've already kind of gone in the weird direction. Although, well, I still will firmly believe that 99.9% of people who followed and were interested and would say they supported the ideas of Gamergate were talking about ethics in game journalism. There's still enough mud slung around Gamergate and controversy and enough hate in the mainstream video game journalism world that around Gamergate that it is not reasonable to try and embrace Gamergate now. I think I just effed up. No. Maybe, maybe not. Let's see. Game UX consultant Celia Hodent, never heard of her. Joffrey Sheaf, Kate Edwards, UCI visiting researcher Kate Lowe, and Fair Play Alliance co-founder Carlos Figueiredo. So it's like a group of people that seem kind of like outsiders, so they might very well be dismissed and not listened to. On the other hand, outsiders are probably exactly who you need as far as a group of people to establish ethics. I certainly wouldn't have a bunch of congressmen and state representatives form their own ethical rules, because yeah, that's no way to actually get any true ethics. Probably wouldn't hurt if there was a public oversight board of some sort, but I don't know how you would do that other than to establish unions in the video game industry and then have representatives of those unions elect members to an oversight board that then oversaw complaints in general, like HR type complaints. I think I would have won this if I had kept Bolster though. But I think at this point I'm doomed. He's just got way too much health. And even if I got another taste of death, that would be like impossible to get it to work. So I could kill this, and then this has a menace thing on it, so I probably need to cycle this. And this to draw another card, and then this. And then this. Did I get 3 health this turn? No. So that's all I can do. Check Raptor has a review for Orcs Must Die 3, which I'm surprised that there's a third game in the Orcs Must Die series, and that it kind of took so long to come out compared to Orcs Must Die 2, which was like 10 years ago, it feels like. They gave it a 7.0, a co-op focus, and a complicated difficulty curve can make this game stressful at times, but in the end it's worth the pain. Pros, well animated and designed visuals, challenging and varied gameplay, lots of freedom with upgrades. Cons, not much of replayability. Endless maps are just campaign maps again. So yeah. I'm not sure if there really is enough relevancy to want to play Orcs Must Die. Anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and concede. They just killed all my characters. Gold tier 2. I could have probably conceded 20 minutes earlier in that game. Gamasutra has an article. The Valve/Oculus veteran Anna Sweet signs on as Bad Robot Game CEO, and she looks young to be CEO. So she's now the CEO of filmmaker J.J. Abrams' game dev studio, which some of the Bad Robot content, I think, in the past has had some interesting experiments in video game elements, but I don't think any of it has been majorly successful. Here, if we look further, it says Bad Robot was formed in 2018 with the assistance of Tencent and Warner Brothers Interactive. It wasn't the company's first foray in the game development side of the entertainment business, but the dedicated studio represented a more focused effort in co-developing mobile and PC games to leverage Bad Robot Games' own talent in storytelling, creative directors, and sound design and visual arts. It kind of works on a bad assumption that people who might be good at making TV or movies are also going to be good at writing and making video games, and I just don't think that's true. Let's see. Sweet herself has had a storied career. I don't know if storied is a positive or negative or neutral term throughout both the game and tech industry, and is credited as one of the driving forces behind the game industry's shift towards digital distribution through her time at Valve. She had previously worked on and advised numerous companies over the past decade and a half, including ones like Oculus and Indie Megabooth, on top of her investment dealings and workings at her own consultant company, Robot Teddy. Interesting. Robot Teddy and now Bad Robot. She's apparently only working at companies that have some kind of robot involvement. I'm gonna have to be careful. I'm gonna end up tossing this card. Let's see. Magic has the state of the... Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Magic has the state of the game announcement, mostly I think focused around Jumpstart, which apparently a Jumpstart event is going to happen, where you could get a couple of cards for 2,000. And then there's apparently some themed packs that you're going to potentially be able to purchase or win. Let's see. The Arena opens historic return. The Arena Open in historic mode is going to return. Let's see. As a big event where you could win a bunch of things if you're actually good. See, Friday night at Magic at Home, historic all access is going to be a thing. There's going to be a premiere draft for Dominaria. I won't be able to afford it unless we get a free ticket entry, which maybe we will. And then there will be a core set 2021 Festival Time, which is going to give you some skins, which I won't be able to afford. And then apparently they're going to get rid of workshops. Let's see, it's with the advent of Jumpstart and our continued what is it? With the introduction of workshops, no, with the advent of Jumpstart and the continued support of Friday Night Magic into the foreseeable future, and the always-on brawl and historic ranked queues, workshops ended up sharing a lot of the same design space as other events and options in games with much more limited availability. So we're tabling these for now as we adjust to the new normal of events and formats. So that they literally just are realizing that they're spreading the players too thin, and people are having a hard time deciding where they should be playing, and that definitely has been a consistent issue with Magic, is that there is like dozens upon dozens of different ways you can play Magic even on Arena that makes it difficult to realize, should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Should I be doing a Premier draft or a standard draft or a quick draft, or should I be playing Dominaria draft or core set drafts? Should I be playing ranked or historic ranked or standard? Moving on, here we have coming soon is Jumpstart and the Arena Open and Amonkhet Remastered, which I don't know if this is the next expansion. And then in development is the Rotation of 2020. A mobile version is in development. This is like the first time I think they've officially announced a mobile version. And Zendikar Rising might be the next expansion. It's either the next expansion after Amonkhet Remastered, or it's just the next expansion. This might be an old set. And then in concept is something called Equestrian, which is probably a new expansion. Historic Anthology 4. So I guess I do have more time on Historic Anthology 3. Play Blade reworking, which I assume that this is the Play Blade, which it definitely does need some reworking. How do we want to do this? Do this one. And the final thing that's in concept is friend deck sharing. All things probably should have been available since day one, or some of that. That friend deck sharing should have been available very soon. Let's see. So, Amonkhet Remastered. The remastering sets for Magic Arena. So basically these are old cards, or a selection of old cards for historic, I think. Yeah. It seems like it's going to be historic, but it feels like it might actually be just put in standard. Which that would be weird, because then your experience playing on Magic Arena would be very different than a standard playing paper Magic. And they're already dangerously getting to the point where some cards just play differently on Magic Arena than they do in paper Magic. And I guess we should keep an eye out to see if they're changing their shift and their focus, and whether they're calling this Arena more, or if they're calling this Magic the Gathering Arena, because they might be starting to focus a little bit back to the idea of labeling it as Magic Arena. Whereas there was a while there it was just called Arena. Equestrian does seem like it is a new standard set, and Historic Anthology 4 is coming out early 2021, so we've got quite a while. So that is just like some total BS that they're saying that Historic 3 is going soon. TechRaptor has an article, Nintendo Famicom changed my life, says Hideo Kojima. Which, in all fairness, I imagine everybody around his age in Japan had a Famicom, and that was a very game-changing thing for people who played games, and that would have been a large amount of people in Japan at the time. There is some silliness about a kid saying something changed their life, because everything that happens to a kid effectively changes their life. So, yeah. having an NES when I was a kid changed my life, certainly. There's no way you get around that concept. It's definitely true. But I would also say having a Virtual Boy changed my life. Or having a PC instead of a Macintosh computer changed my life. So yeah, there was a like TI-89 Plus calculator that I had for only a couple weeks before it got stolen from me, and that changed my life in high school. So it really doesn't mean much, but I understand the sentiment he's trying to imply is that it was a very happy, positive experience. And so I'll take it to mean that, because that's what most people mean when they say something changed their life. Next we have a game called Loraria, which looks like it's a swinging game, almost like a clone of Umahara Kawase, which it would be hard to justify playing this instead of the Umahara Kawase series. This is $8.99, English only, but I'll put it on the fall list. It's being compared to Hat in Time and Shovel Knight, so it might be that this developer is kind of friendly with that group of indie devs. Here we go. So now's the real challenge. Can we get enough on the field to win? Or are we gonna die first? Guess we'll have to wait till the next turn to find out. TechRaptor has an article here. Xbox Series X Velocity architecture is, quote, a radical reinvention. Interesting here that they use a double quote and then a single quote. You'd think, well, as someone in programming who uses single quotes and double quotes like crazy, doing this is completely unacceptable and just terrible editing and writing. Improvements to the I/O, the front side bus, and just things like Infinity Fabric are all like high level CPU architecture things that there definitely is things that are kind of obvious that could have been improved and needed to be improved as far as these products. Okay. Will this get me 3 health? No. But I think I have to do it anyways. So this one attacks and I have to block it. And if this one and this one attacked. Or you can play a spell and you can win that way. As far as what the Xbox Series X Velocity architecture is, TechRaptor doesn't even bother to talk about it. They say just go look at the news post. So let me just go look at the news post and see what it is. Says at the heart of the Xbox Series X is RDNA 2 and Zen 2 architectures. RDNA is probably registered dynamic network or neural architecture. I don't even know what that is. Zen 2 architecture is the AMD thing. Although, are we up to Zen 3? Maybe we aren't. No, we aren't. We're not up to Zen 3. architecture. Let's see. Delivers a best-in-class next-generation processor, delivering more than 12 teraflops of GPU power and more than 4 times the CPU processing power of the Xbox One, blah, 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 blah. 16 gigabytes of GDDR of 6 memory and 10 gigabytes of GPU optimized memory at 560 gigabytes with a capital B, to keep this processor fed with no bottlenecks. Okay. That's explaining and talking about things we already knew about. That's not talking about the new architecture. So is the new architecture just a general descriptor of all of those things? Or is there more here to talk about? Okay. Next paragraph. Introducing the Xbox Velocity architecture. It was designed as the ultimate solution for gaming asset streaming in the next generation. The radical reinvention of traditional I/O subsystem directly influenced all aspects of the Series X designs. I doubt it influenced the outer case display line, or whether or not it had a CD, DVD, Blu-ray drive. But so they're being hyperbolic. Let's see. If our custom processor is at the heart of the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Velocity architecture is the soul. This is getting really flowery. It comprises 4 major components. Our custom NVMe SSD, that's fairly standard. Hardware accelerated decompression blocks to decompress what? Textures from the NVMe, or decompress data in general that's on the NVMe, which that at that point, either one of those kind of seems like they are just hardware accelerated caching. A brand new direct storage API layer, which again would be the NVMe, and sampler feedback streaming. So let's get into each of those. Let's skip the NVMe SSD. It's an SSD. It's a fast SSD. Game packages and assets are compressed to minimize download times and the amount of storage required for each individual unit. So there's kind of a special hardware accelerated CPU just to decompress things, which probably means that everything on a very low level is compressed with the exact same algorithm. Which is not a bad idea, but it certainly wouldn't work on PC when you have all kinds of things compressed all kinds of different ways. With hardware accelerated support for both the industry standard LZ decompressor, and the proprietary algorithm that they just designed for texture data named BC Pack, Xbox Series X provides the best of both worlds. So yeah, it's a extra coprocessor just for decompressing basically textures and game assets, which I guess that means that nothing is going to be fully uncompressed permanently in games, which is reasonable to believe. I don't think there's going to be enough room on the hard drives to just have by default games decompress all their 4K textures and all of their game elements. It'll probably decompress and cache a lot of it, and once the cache fills up, it'll probably start to empty things out. A new direct storage API, which even here they say the standard file I/O APIs were developed more than 30 years ago, although they've probably been tweaked a lot. So a new API is probably good. This would probably be very useful to put into Windows. It is going to be part of the DirectX family as far as branding. Gives them finer grain of control of the I/O operations, empowering them to establish multiple I/O queue prioritization and minimal I/O latencies. I bet most game programmers will not touch any of that. If I was to guess, that is a dead on arrival option, because it would just mean more work. I don't think they want to do more work. And then it has sampler feedback streaming. It's a brand new innovation built on top of all the other advancements. So game textures are optimized at differing levels of detail and resolution called MIP maps, and can be used during rendering based on how close or far away an object is. As the object moves closer to the player, resolution of the texture must increase to be provided crisp detail and visuals. However, the larger MIP maps require a significant amount of memory compared to the lower resolution MIP maps. Today, developers must load the entire MIP level in memory, even in case where they may only sample a very small portion of the overall texture. Through specialized hardware added to the Xbox One X, we are able to analyze texture memory usage by the GPU, and we've discovered that the GPU often accesses less than 1/3 of the texture data required to be loaded into memory. A single scene often includes thousands of different textures, resulting in significant loss in efficient memory and I/O bandwidth utilization. Okay, so I think I know what they're doing here. Can I activate this? Not yet. With these insights, we were able to create and add new capabilities to the Xbox Series X GPU, which enables it to only load sub-portions of map level into memory on demand, just in time when the GPU requires the data. This innovation results in approximately 2.5 times the efficient I/O throughput and memory usage above and beyond raw hardware capabilities on average. SFX provided an effective multiplayer unavailable system memories and I/O bandwidth, resulting in significantly more memory and I/O throughput, I/O meaning input output if I didn't mention that, available. Through the massive increase of I/O throughput, hardware accelerated decompression, direct storage, and significant increases in efficiency provided by sampler feedback streaming, the Xbox Velocity architecture enables the Xbox Series X to deliver effective performance well beyond the raw hardware specs, providing direct, instant, low access to more than 100 gigabytes of game data stored on the SSD just in time for when the game requires it. I'm a little suspicious personally of the sampler feedback streaming, and I wouldn't be surprised if this does cause a effect that becomes very noticeable, in which people look at a texture and the texture is a little bit fuzzy for a second and then it gets clearer. We already have that happening in a lot of games anyways, but I don't see how the sampler feedback streaming improves anything there, and arguably they are making a bad faith argument in this idea that it is better to underutilize the input-output throughput of your device when gaming, when it really isn't. Because what they're saying is that they're opening up more throughput for something else to use it, but there in many cases may not be anything else to use it. So there may just be idle cycles for no reason, which maybe means a higher frame rate at the cost of a smoother appearance on certain textures. But at a certain point, I don't know what the target frame rate really is, even for the Xbox Series X, whether they're trying to get everything at 60 or whether they're trying to push everything up to like 122 and 144 hertz. I don't think they're really trying to push the frame rate up that much. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's some games that just opt not to use the SFS function at all, and those games end up looking a little bit better for it. Or particularly if you're playing like a low polygon game that doesn't really have any textures or anything like that, SFS would be completely useless. Or if you're playing a game that has relatively few textures, it's going to be completely useless. It only makes sense really if you're in a big kind of urban environment where textures aren't getting repeated. Even if you're in a forest, a lot of those textures are just going to be repeated. So you would need to be in a very varied looking urban city environment for that to be best used. It would be the example I would use as far as when that would be best to use. Moving on, we have a game called Hunter's Arena Legends, which is an early access game for $19.99. It's an MMO, English, Korean, and Russian. And so I'm going to try and look at it. Like a lot of these Korean, Asian MMOs, they all tend to look fairly pretty and fairly Asian inspired, but they all tend to kind of have no fan base, and so trying to make an MMO with such a small amount of a fan base never seems to really work. There also seems to be a meme that completely ran over my head, and I didn't hear anything about it, where everybody was celebrating some kind of cake day. I don't know why. And there was just like a lot of cake memes. And then there definitely was somebody that kept posting like pictures of ravioli and being eaten in aggressive, ridiculous ways, eaten off a bed sheet, eaten with your hands. So I don't know if that is some kind of counter meme to the cake day meme or what, but yeah. It's kind of nice to just be completely out of the loop as far as memes go, or as far as at least one meme goes, because it shows me that I'm doing something more important with my life than streaming on Reddit or reading a bunch of stuff on Reddit. Daedalic Entertainment mentioned that Love, Death, and Puzzles, Felix the Reaper, is out now on iOS, which is interesting because I remember this game had come out, but I don't remember anything else about it, so it's just once again one of those puzzle games where, yeah, this was that weird, you have to stand in the shadows but you can rotate the way the shadows look puzzle game. It probably is better than it is on cell phones now compared to it originally being released on PC. So it's kind of no surprise that nobody has said much about it after it came out, because it obviously didn't have much that could be said about it. Either you're going to go particularly cruel and hard being critical of it, or you're just going to ignore it completely. I desperately need land. Desperately need land. So I wasted a wish to just get land. It's probably the worst thing you could do with that card at all. Next we have a game called Patter Warrior, which looks like an obvious asset flip first person shooter game with an odd dark overlay to everything, causing it to be halfway the dark screenshot syndrome. 99 cents, English, allegedly full audio. Next we have a game called Treasure of Kutuma III, which looks like it is an asset flip first person shooter the same way. And some of these assets look kind of interesting, but then there's things that are just like way out of place, and clearly they're just asset flips. 60 cents, that's a odd price that they're selling at. Usually I'd say you'd put it at 59 cents instead of 60 even. It seems to me what we've hit is that there's been just a whole group of low effort asset flip games that just got greenlit to be put on to be put on the Steam storefront, which perhaps this is just delayed reaction to the pandemic, and there was just a backlog, and they kind of put a lot of the asset flip games on secondary review, and then they said, well, forget it, let's just say okay to all of these because they're not that objectionable. Gematsu has an article. The Tales of Castoria app install is now available. The game is currently undergoing maintenance in preparation for launch. I don't know if this is worldwide, though, or if this is just for Japan. I don't know if it supports English either, as one of the Tales of series of games. I don't know if this game is going to be particularly good, because it kind of looks like it's just text, but it's tagged as an RPG. Right, so what I'll do is I'll click on the Google Play Store, and then I'll click the install button, and yeah, it seems like I can install it if I log in. So everything's written in English, so I think it's ready to go. It offers in-app purchases, but the game itself is free to install, which maybe we'll find very quickly that it's free to install, but there's very little game there otherwise. Really don't have enough time or energy to be a critic of cell phone games, though, so I'll install it and I'll look at it, but I'll probably only spend like 5 minutes on it in total. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Rosewater, which is a point-and-click adventure set in the West, which we haven't had too many of those, so I definitely want that on the following list. It's coming out in 2021, English, full audio, and German. So I probably saw a tweet about that game, and that's why it's on the list. Let's see. Next, we have something that's just written in Asian, although this indicates to me it might be called Card Killer, as an interactive fiction. Looks to me like it might very well be a Chinese visual novel. I would say Chinese would be my guess, considering how we've got like repeated screenshots. English is not supported. Also, there was a screenshot of just an empty background, and it's not widescreen. $3.59, Chinese only. Yeah. There's a shockingly high level of accuracy that one can have as far as determining whether something is Japanese or Chinese based on the quality of it, even though one is definitely trying to copy the appearance of the other. I'm gonna do no blocks for this turn. Next, we have a game called Wolf Territory, which looks like an asset flip. It says it's a point-and-click game. There might be something here if this was like an early 90s clone. It's $1.49. Then here we have something called Small Sister, and Bizarre Earthquake, and Expectophobia in English. I think this game developer probably makes some garbage. Yeah, Herd is Coming is mixed. Small Sister is mixed. Bizarre Earthquake is mixed. Insectophobia episode 1 is mostly negative. Let's see. 2, 4, 6. I can see the beginning of the end, even though we've been going like 3 hours. Yep. Do it. Gonna have to be fairly careful here because we do have one that flies and several that otherwise need to be on the field. And I can't do this because this would kill me. So if we can leave this, if we can attack with all 3 of these next turn and kill maybe a couple, or if we could block maybe a couple. With the greatest power. So interesting. Does that negate this, or did I just... Let's see, that resolves. Then it exiles my Bolas Citadel. And then... Let's see what happens here. Yeah. At this point, I couldn't have activated anything. Can we win here? We'll have to see. The only way we win is we do this and we do this. Then that gives 4 damage. One of which we can go ahead and just sacrifice. Get one more thing. Yeah, I don't think I win here. Next, we have a game on Steam called Chess of Chains, which the name sounds interesting, and the idea of chess where you have to make specific chains and lines kind of makes sense, but it almost, at this point, turns it into something completely different from chess and something closer to a Sudoku or a puzzle game. It's $4.49, which is too expensive, and it's English full audio, allegedly. It's too expensive for that level of graphics. So I'm going to have to say no to that. Let's see. Bandai Toys announces a cooking battle action game called Taboja for Switch, which might come to the West as like a cooking Pokemon mix, but might have a hard time being localized to the West too if you're going to be cooking a decent amount of Asian food. As popular as Asian food is in the United States, it's not that popular, and this is one of those games that totally only works because of the Wiimote functionality in the Switch, and it would not really translate to any other game and is pretty much a gimmick game. And there's been several gimmick games that came about during the Wii U era and basically were fun. Zack and Wiki was fun. The play for that brief moment and then kind of fell apart. Yeah, I've lost. Dragon's Dogma original anime series premieres September 17th, and it will be on Netflix. This is kind of the first I've even heard of it, and they put out some screenshots, and here we've got a shirtless guy. Is Dragon's Dogma the game where you could sleep with a bunch of people? Here he again is shirtless, and maybe he has some like scar in his chest. Maybe they're trying to hide that by having her in the front. In a lot of ways, this looked very much just like the same characters and the same general fantasy setting as the Castlevania series. So I wonder if something fell apart there. Let's see. If we go to Steam and we look at Dragon's Dogma Dark Ariser, you can see this is a very positive game that I don't own for $8.99. Let's see, it is a open world RPG game, partial nudity, suggestive themes. I don't think I played this one, honestly. I think there's a couple other fantasy games that came out around this time, 2016, that was just that. The North American version lacks the Japanese voice pack and the Griffith Guts DLC due to licensing issues. Griffith Guts from the Berserk manga / anime. It was a manga first. There's a patch, a Japanese patch is available as a mod link below if you want that voice acting. Which, okay, and it's rated 81 on Metacritic. Certainly would be easier to play something like Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen than it would be to go back and try and play Witcher 3 a second time. And yeah, maybe I'll watch the Netflix anime, but if every video game anime made by Netflix is just going to be more Castlevania episodes, why not just make more Castlevania episodes? If anything, I would say the lessons that need to be learned from the Castlevania anime, as much as people liked it, is that it was a very short season 1 and then kind of a long break until season 2 for what little content you actually got in season 1, and then season 2 very quickly rushed to get rid of Dracula, Alucard, in the first place, and then the third season really doesn't bring him back or show anything. So for as much as the second season focused around Alucard, to have him not play any role is kind of a problem. And maybe that's what happened, really, is that over the course of these 3 kind of short seasons of Castlevania, the voice actor for Alucard dropped out, and now they're trying to do Dragon's Dogma to replace it. Or maybe they found that they had fewer and fewer viewers every season, so they really only want to do 3 seasons, which is typical for Netflix anyways, and so we may see just a ton of fantasy video game animes that Netflix makes, and they go 3 seasons and then that's that. Which, that's not an inherently terrible idea to have just little tasters, samplers happen. That's what anime has always kind of been, is a sampler and teaser to say, hey, now that you're invested in this 1 season of this anime, go read the manga that ran for 5 years and has the entire story, or go read the manga that's still running to this day. There's definitely an argument to say watching the first season of Bleach to get interested in it, and then stopping watching the first season of Bleach and reading the manga instead. There probably is a more specific arc point that it would be better to read, to stop at. I would imagine after they rescued the girl who was taken back to the land of the dead after they rescued her from being executed. That probably would be the time to stop watching Bleach and read the manga. Next, we have a game on Steam called Day Island, which looks like it is a run and gun hack and slash game. They're saying it's a small hold and gun boss rush minigame of casual difficulty. It's $2.24, and there's a whole bunch of other island games. So it seems like they're flooding Steam with these kind of cheap games. So I'm going to say no to that. Even though this does look fairly pretty, they needed to frankly just make one good game instead of a dozen bad games. It just speaks to a lack of intelligence or character in your product, or care for the quality of your product. There was a Stadia presentation. A few things came out, nothing really that interesting because Stadia is not that interesting. Click and Play from Stadia aims to speed up game launches with shareable instant play links. Okay. I guess that probably means that it automatically loads up a game as soon as you create the link, and then it just holds that game in memory until it runs out of memory at a pause state. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Slam City Hitler's Escape. One would assume you got a game with Hitler in your name, you'd probably get some extra review from Valve. Maybe not. I can't say this immediately looks like a troll game, though. It really doesn't. So I'll put it on the follow list for $3.59, English and Polish. Although, in all fairness, as a YouTuber, I probably would have to just call this Slam City and not have Hitler in the name, and even that might particularly still get red flagged and demonetize and de-advertise my videos. Not that YouTube can do much to de-emphasize and de-advertise my videos. Game Switcher has an article. PUBG has sold over 70 million copies worldwide. That's a big number. It's a little surprising PUBG is still going on. Here we have a game just called Anime Memes. It's tagged with everything, and it's just a low effort, standard, same old anime characters thrown into an asset flip first person shooter or something like that. These links are not loading as fast as I would like them to, but they certainly aren't loading anywhere as bad as when I was uploading to YouTube. Here we have Christophe Derenez named head of Ubisoft Montreal after Jonas Mallay's resignation. I think we already talked about this, but this might be a completely different group of people replacing a completely different group of people, so I'll just mention it again. Czech Raptor has an article. eFootball Pro Evolution Soccer 2021 will reportedly be a smaller scale DLC. That does seem like a good idea. We already talked about that. Here we have a game on Steam called Gundog Rock Rapid, which is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up bullet hell game. Let's see, is there anything here that's particularly interesting to me other than anime characters that probably show up 2 or 3 times? No. $1.59, English only. Yeah. Even if you put like a full 2-hour anime movie in the middle in cutscenes between a side-scrolled shoot-'em-up game, I don't think that would really work for me or interest me in playing the gameplay elements. It would just probably irritate me. Tech Raptor has an article. Ubisoft's Skull and Bones reboot is rumored to be in development, which I guess Skull and Bones was a game at some point? Did it ever come out? It says apparently it came out in 2017 or is announced in 2017. They're calling it a reboot in the idea that they abandoned the first game, and so now they're working on a second game called Skull and Bones, which is probably boils down to the fact that they got the copyright for Skull and Bones, and they've got to make some game that uses that name. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's completely different or just slightly similar in that it uses a lot of the art assets and visuals. Moving on, TechRaptor has this article: Hearthstone Shulomancy Academy expansion debuts cross-class cards. And this is an interesting idea, in the sense that by the time I was done playing Hearthstone, the vast majority of interesting and good cards were common cards, neutral cards that could be played by everybody. And then there were just a small handful in every expansion of maybe 10 to 12 class-specific cards that had you playing as a specific class when you wanted to pull off specific gameplay mechanics, class-specific gameplay mechanics. Whereas in Magic, you could play a black deck, but you could also play a black and white deck, or you could play a black or white, red, green, and blue deck and just have all 5 colored decks if you wanted it. Those options in that level of possibility of confusion were not available to Hearthstone. Perhaps that let them put some kind of different style of gameplay and make each style of gameplay a little bit more unique than Magic, where Magic kind of just lets the player do whatever they want. Hearthstone, in a nutshell, kind of takes away some of the more confusing open world elements that you can do with Magic and makes it more simplified and easier to go. But I would say Hearthstone has just been getting more and more complicated over the years, and this certainly just overcomplicates it. And honestly, it would have been easier for them to just take a lot of cards out of being character class specific and just putting them in the neutral set. There's considerably less cards compared to Magic in Hearthstone, and they since Hearthstone is a digital only card game, they can change the cards and what they do and what they say and what they cost, and have done that many times, whereas those kind of errata changes have not really ever happened in Magic, with the exception of the change of companion cards and maybe a few other places. So you could play alpha cards from Magic if you're playing a style of Magic that allows alpha cards, and they still work and synergize fairly well with modern cards. It does create a situation where Magic cards are never as good as some of those alpha cards. That they can't have Lightning Bolt, which does like 3 damage for 2 mana. They have to have Shock that does 2 damage for 2 mana instead. Whereas the power creep is fairly high in Hearthstone, but not that high. And Yu-Gi-Oh! The power creep, I think, is just amazingly high. So they had kind of already introduced this idea by having cabals, and I guess what they're really doing now is they're instead of having a cabal, which was 3 character classes, they're now having dual character classes, and then they're putting the side border art on the side that looks fairly ugly, frankly, and that's not very pretty at all. But I would say in general, compared to Magic cards, this artwork does look better. They really broke out of the card aspect, and see how the circles just are rounded at the top, and instead of having a straight line like Magic does, they have this kind of wavy banner, and the power and attack are in the lower corners very nicely, and most of their text in Hearthstone is simplistic and big and easy to read. It's way easier to play Hearthstone on a TV screen 10 feet away than it is to play Magic. But I still kind of think once you get the hang of playing collectible card games, Hearthstone is kind of limited, and it does. It's not Pokemon, the card game, or anything like that, but it is kind of more attempting to be kid friendly. And it really isn't because of Hearthstone that I stopped playing Hearthstone as much as it was Activision Blizzard being the reason that I stopped playing Hearthstone. They also introduced a Spellburst keyword. This is probably the second or third expansion since I stopped playing Hearthstone that's come out. But yeah, I'm still planning on playing the second dinner Ben Brode Marvel card game from day one, and I'm hoping that that isn't just so super dumbed down. Even if it is super dumbed down, it may just be so popular that it works. And frankly, if it has fewer daily quests and takes up less of my time, that'd be great. We might get to a point where I stop looking at like every game that comes out, and instead we curate it, and I only talk about games that are actually super important to talk about, which come out very rarely. And we have 2-hour at max streams on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Excuse me as I drink some water. TechRaptor had an article, Stadia Connect shows new features and upcoming games like Outriders. So let's see. Orcs Must Die 3, Serious Sam 4, PGA Tour Hitman 2, Hitman 2, WWE 2K Battlegrounds, Hello Neighbor, Super Bomberman R, NBA 2K21, Sekiro Shadows Dice 12, Hello Neighbor Hide and Seek, and then Hitman 3, and One Hand Clapping and Outcasters. Only one of those seems to be an actual Stadia exclusive, whereas Orcs Must Die, Orcs Must Die 3, I guess, is a Stadia exclusive too. That explains why it came out so late, is because Google basically funded them, the development. Okay. A rare left Super Mario Bros. 3 auction sells a gaming oddity. Well, I don't know how. That's a terrible thing. So this is like, as I understand it, the first print run of shrink-wrapped Super Mario Bros. 3 games after they stopped doing their experiment of just releasing, selling NES games in like New York and maybe California. Before then, there were sticker boxes on the NES games, and so this is like a rare one. It's shrink wrapped, and it is like now the most expensive game to ever sell. So if you look at the picture, you have the hand behind the article here, where it says Brothers on the left, where you look over here and you have it on the right. So, and you can see that the colors are a little bit duller, where they're a little bit brighter here. That might just be sun damage in general. You see the yellow is fairly faded. This might actually be the shrink wrap making that faded. The left variant of Super Mario Bros. 3, the right is the right more common one. Let's see. This is the left first production in 1990. Let's see. And yeah, I don't think that this article knew how much it was sold for. This isn't even the right image. But it sold for more than, I think, the experimental PlayStation the Nintendo PlayStation went for or any other game. So it's like video games that are extremely, extremely rare are starting to sell for a decent price. But the vast majority of people who thought they were collecting video games did not keep them in boxes, did not keep them shrink wrapped. They didn't keep the boxes and the manuals. Even my Nintendo collection, of which there's a lot, probably doesn't have a major value for the items it has in general. That there might be there's a significant amount of gold and raw material in my collection that people would take. I plan to give my Nintendo collection to the National Video Game Museum as soon as I can get around to it, which isn't happening anytime soon. And I imagine they will take a lot of what I have and have it as their third, fourth backup, or they'll just auction it or just give it away, or try to fund things, or they'll put it on floor display so that people can just touch it and not be really afraid of kids touching it and breaking things. Moving on, we have a game called Linda and Joan Prologue 4 months earlier. This looks like a demo for a game that's coming out in 2020 called Linda and Joan. In general, it doesn't even look particularly greatly interesting. I don't know if I want a low polygon game where you're just walking around and apparently talking via speech bubbles. That seems not polished enough. We have about 10 more things to talk about. And maybe some of them are redundant, so we can not cover them. TechRep has an article, Outcaster Stadia release and more game content confirmed in Stadia Connect. Guess this game is Outcasters. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like it's a player versus player top-down shooter game. And then one hand clapping. Looks like it's a platforming kind of puzzle game. Maybe with some music elements to it. Super Bomberman R. Also, TechRaptor started doing this loading screen, which I don't know if that's my internet or their internet. See. Matsu says Stadia Games and Entertainment signs exclusive games for Harmonix, Uppercut Games, and Supermassive Games, but no information apparently as far as what games are coming over from those companies. Dead by Daylight is coming to Stadia in September. Pretty much the last thing Dead by Daylight I think isn't available on, and still, I mean, you kind of have to applaud that Dead by Daylight is still trying to be a game. It is definitely going to be one of those horror games that that just keeps existing regardless of not being ever super popular. Next, we have a game on Steam called American Isekai Prologue. That's how you pronounce it. Isekai. Which Isekai means another world. Fantasy worlds typically. This is just a RPG maker garbage game for free. The prologue is, but the prologue is probably a demo for a game that they're planning on trying to sell. Super Bomberman R was announced for Stadia, which okay. It's an online Bomberman game, of which there's been fairly too many online things. Although maybe this is kind of like Tetris 99, where you're playing against other people, which that does put an interesting twist to it, but I don't know if that actually makes it any more interesting as far as what you really wanted to, as far as people who would actually want to play that game. There's a blog on Gamasutra, the surprising way that paid DLC works. I think I might want to read this. See. The devs all had something in common. The games launched decently on Steam, so they have a fair amount of banked wish lists. The devs are practical business people who actively take advantage of Steam sales and bundling. They're not afraid, especially later in the life cycle of the game, to discount more in order to play up the deluxe versions of the game with all bundled DLC in it. Okay. So I guess that's the way you do DLC in general speak. Here we have a game on Steam called Modest Hero, which looks like it's kind of a point and click adventure game. I don't know if there's enough polish here in the way this is drawn. This is kind of a unique art style. $8.99, whole bunch of languages. I'll put it on the following list. We'll see if people like it. But I imagine most people won't even give it a chance, and I probably won't give it a chance for the same reason. Let's see. Gamasutra has a blog for improving narrative accessibility, which I think they're talking about like in visual novels in particular. Let's see. And they're talking about the Zero Escape series. This must be from one of the Zero Escape games I didn't play. Wow, it would be interesting if it turned out that the narrative and narration in games were so heavily influenced by Zero Escape games, and I had such a struggle to even get finish the first game. Next, we have a troll game here, Simp Slayer Simulator 2K20, which is obviously an asset flip first-person shooter game, but in all fairness, I will say at least this is way better looking as far as a first-person shooter game. I don't know at a certain point how this isn't just a school shooting simulator game, though, by a different name, for $2.54. English full audio. And I don't fully get the idea of hating simps as a concept, because at a certain point are you just going like hardcore MGTOW, and that you if you're a male interested in females, or are you just hating people that overly support more than you like cam girls, which I just don't think I can fully agree with that idea. Like, if you like cam girls and you want to give money to cam girls, fine. It's not like you were going to give money to my YouTube page instead, or my YouTube channel or Patreon instead. So, like, just do your own thing. It really feels like being up in someone else's business for no reason. Moving on, we have Story of Seasons, Friends of Mineral Town. This is another one of those Stardew Valley farming games. This actually one looks rather nice, and I do want to keep an eye on it, but I think I'll fairly quickly choose not to cover it. And apparently you get water from a lake, and you jump into the lake and bathe in it. There is a major problem here. We can see $49.99 for this game, which probably should be a $20 game, and $9.95 in DLC already. Whereas, I wonder how much Stardew Valley actually costs these days. Let's put this on the file list and see how much Stardew Valley costs in comparison. I already own it. $14.99 with the soundtrack DLC for $4.99. Stardew Valley, in fairness, not as pretty as that game and more 2D, but overwhelmingly positive for the people that liked it. But I didn't like it, so it's just not the kind of games for me, I think. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Nico Ghost, which Nico is Japanese for cat. This is where you switch between 2D and 3D things, and I'm fairly certain there's a Paper Mario or Mario game that works that way. So that's not a terrible thought to steal from Nintendo concepts. This is free, and there's a Kickstarter out for it, and it supports English, German, Spanish, Japanese, and Korean. Yeah, I imagine we're going to start seeing a lot more examples of demos coming out as advertisements to Kickstarters. And as people don't have real money to spend, getting people to potentially be hyped enough to buy games when they do have money is probably the next best thing you could do. Next, we have a game called Ronald's Run, which looks like a weird little fox creature that seems to run around and deal with some kind of creatures and monsters. It does feel very poorly animated as far as the movement and as far as what the actual gameplay is. Though unfortunately it's free to play. It's not a student project, is it? Because I'd give it more of a chance if it was a student project. It's English only. But yeah, doesn't look polished enough. We have about 4 more tabs, and that'll be it for today. I'll have to play 6 to 11 more games, and the problem with starting so late and trying to get all 15 victories is it's just not going to happen. So I am going to start, probably, if I have extra time, playing early. So we may very well at certain points have 5, 10, even 15 victories before I even stream. And if that's the case, we'll just play until we cover the news, and that'll be it. But I'll only do that if I can play before, say, like 10 in the morning or something. Something where it would be kind of unrealistic for me to just try and stream. If I'm at like 3 in the morning or 1 in the morning, that's no point to try and stream. Next, we have a game on Steam called Tawaga Amongst Shadows, which just looks very nicely animated in this cutscene. But it's tagged as like a beat 'em up game. The actual game looks fairly different, but I'm willing to give it a chance. $14.99, and English does have single player. I want to double check on that. This might be just a little bit too explosive of a game. It might just have too much distracting flashes on it. And it kind of feels like he just might stand on top of this pyramid and fight everybody as they try to crawl up and attack him. There was the end of the movie The One by, I believe, Jet Li, ended that way, where the bad guy is just fighting against hordes and hordes of criminals climbing up a pyramid. I think we already talked about this. TechRaptor's updated new European Union regulations promise to reshape the mobile stores. See, giving new rights to developers and publishers. I'm not going to read through this completely, but we'll see what really happens. If it changes things or if it really doesn't change things. A lot of European Union announcements and proclamations don't do anything. But speaking of world agencies and the EU and its inherent, like, turning a blind eye and being corrupted by China, we're going to go on a brief anti-China rant here. Like, and in this one, it's not even directly China. It's just Asian countries in general that are tend to have high amounts of youths that play video games to the point where the parents or the government officials claim that those kids are addicted to video gaming, and they pushed that narrative very hard in the medical industry inside of the World Health Organization and the European Union. No, I think I'm confusing European Union with the other one. I am, aren't I? Yeah. So yeah, European Union doesn't have anything to do with the story. But anyways, the World Health Organization heavily tried to push the idea of video game addiction. I went on many rants saying how this is a terrible idea to define video game addiction as something when it isn't something at all. There are definitely people that can be diagnosed as having obsessive compulsive disorder. There's no reason to create these false video game addiction categories that have no scientific evidence behind them to prove that they even exist. Same is true for sex addiction. True addictions have to be some kind of chemical in your body, in your brain that you need. Otherwise, you're going to suffer adverse effects. And that chemical can't just be dopamine, the happiness drug, because you enjoy what you're doing. So, alcoholism is a real addiction, because if you try to go cold turkey after 20 years of being a heavy alcoholic, you'll die. And they literally prescribe people with alcoholism alcohol when they're doing surgery on them or such to wean them off of it. If you've been taking, say, heroin for decades, you can't go cold turkey on that or you'll die. Those are real addictions. That's where an addiction happens. If you enjoy playing video games and that creates dopamine in your brain, you are not addicted to dopamine. That is a natural substance your body creates, and you are not addicted to video games. It's just not a real thing. And the argument for this always had the fear that this was going to be used as an excuse, particularly in Asian countries, for government officials to round up and snatch the children of political adversaries and dissidents and throw them in internment camps and throw them in the concentration camps. So why am I talking about this story? Well, somebody jumped the gun because in China, a man has just been sentenced for rounding up Chinese kids and locking them in rooms and beating them, torturing them, and throwing them into internment camps and concentration camps because they had video game addiction. Jailing them unlawfully for up to 10 days. And the only reason why this one person, I will fully say as an opinion, is in trouble at all is because either this got out that he was doing this or he was doing this without the tacit permission of the Chinese government, which wants to do this. They totally want to do this. They're already putting plenty of other people in plenty of other camps for plenty of other reasons. They want this in their back pocket, and they don't want individuals to start doing it and making it look bad before they decide to do it. But yeah, what was once just a fear is now a confirmed threat. And that's the problem with video game addiction. Nobody in the middle of the United States, no parent in the middle of the United States is, well, I can't even say that. Most parents in the United States would not diagnose their kids with video game addiction and then send them off to some rehab facility. They're not going to care enough about that. But the people in Asia definitely might do that, particularly if the narrative continues to be pushed that this is a problem. It definitely happened in the United States in the past, where plenty of kids naturally discovering and exploring their bodies were thrown into sanatoriums and diagnosed with sex addictions and masturbation addictions. It happened for decades in the puritanical anti-sex history of the United States. So this has happened before in other forms, and it will happen again if we're not careful. So rant over. We got two more things. We have Gamatsu saying Buried Stars launches July 30th, and it has a gameplay trailer. What is this? It's a Communication X survival visual novel. Interesting. wonder what Communication X Survival breaks down to as an idea. This is from Line Games, which Line runs a popular chat service, and they seem to publish games. Line Games published the global version of Destiny Child for the first year. Yeah, it does seem like it is a kind of find the hidden object visual novel and then read the chat logs quite a bit. Interesting. It seems like Studio Largo is probably the actual developer. I'd be surprised if it was the other way around. Let's see, yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised if Studio Largo is a Korean company, because Destiny Child's developer, Shift Up, was a Korean company, and maybe Line Games tries to bring in Korean games. There is a growing acceptance of Korean games and a growing quality of Korean games in Japan and the Japanese audience as far as mobile games and games in general. So we might start to see more Korean games come to the West as more Korean games come outside of Korea into Japan. Next, we have a game on Steam called Golf Masters, which looks like a fairly generic golf game for $7.99. Made for VR, English full audio. The fact that it's made for VR is the only thing that would save this and put this on the fall list. I could totally see playing golf in VR, because unlike being able to go to a workshop and do woodworking at almost any point, going to a club and playing 18 holes, it costs money, it costs time, it has to not be raining. There's quite a lot of reasons why that just might not happen. Alright, well then that brings me to the Humble Bundle. We have a Warhammer 2020 bundle for $1. You can get a bunch of Warhammer games, including Vermintide End Times. I don't think I own any of the Warhammer games, so if somebody was to gift me like all of these, it'd probably be a fairly good offer. $7.15 to get more Warhammer Universe games. Blood Bowl 2 is probably the most popular one at $13. It's an interesting price points. Dawn of War 3, Space Marine Collection. It'd be hard to justify buying it myself, though. Let's see if this bundle is a book bundle, or if this is, Pathfinder book bundle. Kind of, I think, also in the Warhammer universe. And then they've got a game creator bundle that seems to be a whole bunch of like books and demos of games that I don't think most people would want to buy. Either these are books or demos or games, or these are just games that I can't recognize any of them. Let's see. Make your own games with the newest bundle. Get software like 001 Game Creator, Pixel Mash, and Omega Modern Graphics Pack. Yeah, I don't recognize any of that. I wonder how hard it is to make an image like this. You probably can do this fairly easily using either JavaScript or a script in like Photoshop, but they didn't even give it like a second pass to make sure things don't end up next to each other. So it'd be interesting if this is done with JavaScript. It kind of seems like it is being done with JavaScript. It's an interesting idea. I don't know if that really draws people's eyes downward much, or if it draws their eyes upward. Like, looking at this background scrolling, I kind of just want to stand here and look. Then I'll maybe want to scroll down and see it move some more, and then it starts to fade, so then I just want to scroll back up. So it's really failing to catch my attention. It needs to scroll all the way down the background, all the way to everything. And it probably wouldn't hurt if it went the other direction and fell from the sky instead of scrolling up. But it definitely is an artistic, interesting design. Better than just a static black image, which, in all fairness, that's mostly what I would make and use. Like, there's plenty of artwork on my YouTube channel that I could improve. Okay, and then that brings me to my Twitter feed. A new PlayStation 1 Core Duck Station now available for RetroArch. And more games are going to have come out, but I severely doubt we'll have any major news. Let's see. Yeah. Gonna have to mute a Twitter feed that Insomniac Games is tweeting out, retweeting like every word. This Twitter feed seems to tweet out every single word in existence, and Insomniac Games is wasting everybody's time by retweeting that, retweeting words that make sense, like Ratchet and Clank and things like that. So I wonder if every word as a Twitter feed has just tweeted out in the past every single word in the dictionary, and they're just scrolling down in like an alphabetical order every word that they would look for, or that they'd want to tweet out, retweet. Alright, well, let's see, where are we on hard drive space? I have about 107 gigabytes left, so I should be fine for a while, but I definitely need to schedule a ton of videos, and I've really just dropped the ball. I'm constantly dropping the ball. The good news is once I get everything scheduled that has already been uploaded, with maybe the exception of the MTG Arena videos, at that point my automated script should work, and I can start experimenting with that, and then that should potentially fix this for the foreseeable future, which would be nice. Anyways, we've been going 3 hours and a half, so that's going to be it for the stream. I've got 11 victories I need to do off screen. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.